akong trabaho.
Ang taas na naman ang tuition fee sa eskwela.
Nakaligtas ka nga sa COVID, hihimatayin ka naman sa taas ng bayarin sa ospital. Ang party list na subok na sumaklolo sa mga kapabayang humihingi ng tulong sa panahon ng kagipitan. Piliin ang party list na nagbibigay ng malaking help sa mga problema ninyo.
Help Pilipinas Party List!
You will know a nation of what kind of a leader there is. Look at the fruits of that. Look at the result of that leadership. If the leader wants cleanliness, and he has that spirit of being clean and cleanliness, everything that is under him will be clean. If the leader wants law or order, the result will be law and order. If there is chaos, then that leader is chaotic. Because the failure and success of everything depends on the leader.
The views and opinions expressed by the program host did not necessarily state or reflect the official views and position of Sunshine Radio DZAR 1026 Manila, Suarosug Media Corporation, and Sunshine Media Network International.
Problema nyo, itawag kay Panelo. Ikaw ba'y may suliranin na may kinalaman sa mga ahensya ng ating pamahalaan? Inihahandog ng SMNI ang programang makakapiling ninyo sa araw-araw na maaari ninyong maging daingan. Tampok ang dating Chief Legal Counsel ng nakaraang Pangulo, ang veteranong abogado na si Attorney Salvador Sal Panelo.
Bishops.
Tulong at payo tagapamagitan sa ating mga lingkod bayan. Problema nyo, itawag kay Panelo.
Magandang araw, Pilipinas, sa lahat po ng mga nakatune in sa SMNI. Magandang araw din sa ating mga kababayan sa mga po kayong panig ng mundo. Narito po ang programang tutugon sa katanungan ng ating mga kababayan. Public service ang atid ng SMNI tuwing umaga. Sa ngalan po ni Partner Hannah Jane Sancho, ako po inyong lingkod, si MJ Mondehar. At ang sasagot sa katanungan ng ating mga kababayan, walang iba kundi si Attorney Salvador Sal Panelo. Good morning, Attorney Sal.
Good morning, MJ. Magandang araw, Pilipinas. Magandang araw sa lahat ng mga nanonood sa atin sa lahat ng panig ng mundo, kasama na yung mga nasa Facebook ngayong araw ng Biyernes, ika-17 ng buwan ng Enero.
Yes, sir. Bukas na pong linya ng ating mga komunikasyon sa ating pong landline, sa ating call line. Magpadala po kayo yung mensahe sa ating text line. At napapanood din po tayo live sa lahat po ng ating mga social media accounts sa Facebook, sa YouTube, sa ating website, smna.com, rumble.com, at sa lahat po ng ating mga partner cable TV channels nationwide. And bago ang lahat, Attorney Sal, special po ang ating episode ngayong araw dahil marami po ang nagulantang sa naging confirmation hearing ng nominee sa pagka-Attorney General sa ilalim po ng incoming Trump administration, kung saan ay detalye po sa pagtatanong sa confirmation hearing ng Senate Committee, sa isang komite sa Senado, kung paano po ginamit, na-weaponize ang Department of Justice, ang FBI, at iba pang mga institusyon sa Amerika para habulin po ang mga simbahan. O ika nga sa kanilang termino ay people of faith. Panoorin po natin, Attorney Sal, ang video na ito.
Thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm so glad that you've been nominated, as we discussed when we had the chance to meet.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to work with you as the State Attorney General for a number of years, and I'm delighted to see you here today before the committee. I look forward to your confirmation. You will be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. One of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to get even more specific. In the last 4 years, this administration has carried out an unprecedented attack and campaign against people of faith. If you look at the numbers, we've never seen anything like it before in American history. It has been one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the Justice Department and in the history of the FBI. And I hope that you will reverse this and do right by every American citizen, including especially people of faith. Let me give you some specifics. After the Dobbs case was decided by the Supreme Court, over 100 pregnancy care centers and over 300 churches in this country were attacked, vandalized, firebombed. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's Justice Department brought in those cases?
I do not, Senator.
It's a stunning number. It's 2. Hundreds of churches, hundreds of pregnancy care centers. And I might just add, these pregnancy care centers, the attacks on them, which were violent, which were gruesome, were egged on and encouraged by rhetoric from members of Congress, including members of this body, who have said that pregnancy care centers aren't real medicine, that they're not real doctors. They have legitimized these attacks. And the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans, but at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FACE Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Houck from Pennsylvania, to whom this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, 7 children. In the early morning hours, an FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. This kind of outrageous, disparate treatment has to end. So here's my question to you. Will you protect churches and pregnancy care centers when they are targeted for violence, when they are targeted for intimidation, when their members or parishioners are threatened with violence or other acts of illegal behavior?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the disparate treatment of Americans on the basis of religious faith?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans for nothing more than their pro-life beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
Will you ensure that nothing like the Mark Houck case happens again, that Americans do not have SWAT teams arriving on their front doors with armed weapons to terrorize their children and their spouses, only in the end, of course, to have the case lost because there was nothing to it? Will you put an end to that kind of deliberate intimidation of the good American citizens on the basis of their religious beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
I'm glad to hear you say that because we need it. We need it. Ms. Bondi, we need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that. You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable, unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights, and we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I am confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides, that this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here in my just few seconds that are remaining. This memo targeting Catholic parishes repeatedly refers to as an expert source a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long history as an anti-religious group that has repeatedly gone after conservative and religious organizations, called them hate groups, called them sometimes terrorist groups. They're cited in this memo. They once infamously, the SPLC called the Family Research Council a terrorist hate group, and an armed gunman came into their lobby and opened fire. Will you put a stop to the use of the SPLC as an official source for any Department of Justice memorandum or finding?
That will be one of the first things we will look at as well, Senator, and report back to you and the committee.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yung po mga kababayan ay bahagi po ng naging talakayan sa confirmation hearing ng susunod na head ng DOJ sa ilalim po ng Trump administration. And to discuss further in that topic, we're lucky to have with us the counsel, not just an ordinary counsel, but the general counsel of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ in the U.S. who's been winning cases there, Attorney Michael Green via Zoom. Attorney Green, good day. You will be joined by former Chief Legal Counsel of former President Rodrigo Duterte, Attorney Sal Panelo. Good day, gentlemen.
Good morning to you folks. I'm glad to see you all.
Good morning, Attorney Green.
Yes,
My favorite lawyer. Hi, Sal.
Hi.
Yes, Attorney Sal.
Well, I read the transcript and I saw the video, and I'm glad that the new Solicitor General will look into the weaponization of the Department of Justice, which is, as described by the Congressman, the most disgraceful chapter in the United States of America's history.
Your thoughts on that, Attorney Green?
Well, you know, it's a sad time for me when I see what's happened in your country. Weaponization of our government through the Attorney General and the President. And it happened through Biden, and it happened through his Attorney General. I've never seen anything like that in 50 years of practicing law. Now, the weaponization doesn't necessarily relate to one particular group of people. And I'll tell you how it, in my view, what happened in your country that shocked me. When I saw what looked like an overwhelming paramilitary group with 2,000 members go into a compound to try to arrest Pastor Quiboloy. And it was unbelievable. It was like they were looking for a terrorist. But the weaponization, what's happened here in our country, is when the Supreme Court, through Roe versus Wade, overruled the Dobbs and Jackson case versus Jackson, which simply said, now, if you want an abortion, leave it up to each state and every citizen. You vote for abortion or you don't vote for abortion. They didn't say you can't have abortions. Well, there was such an outcry from a certain group of people. Our president, I believe, saw that as a way to get votes. Anyone that's anti-abortion, they're going to get them. And what they did to the case that Josh Hawley spoke about, it's a guy with a family and children who they said violated the FACE Act. And even though the federal government didn't want to prosecute him, the local government didn't want to prosecute him, they sent a SWAT team of 20 with guns to terrorize his family. He was arrested, taken in handcuffs, and a jury acquitted him within an hour. Now, how do I relate this to the kingdom of Jesus Christ? You know, I've been part of the kingdom as their general counsel for a number of years. I've represented them in countries in every continent. I've seen the work they've done for the poor, people that couldn't find food, they didn't have housing, they didn't have clothing, they didn't have an education. And then we find out in our country, they issue a warrant for his arrest. A federal judge, U.S. Attorney's Office, they get an indictment for Pastor Quiboloy, and they charge him with very serious crimes. And they do nothing about it for almost 3 years. You want him, arrest him. Turn it over to the authorities in the Philippines. If you really believe what your informants have told you about the pastor, arrest him. They do nothing. And then I see that through the papers that I read and my friends in your country, that your new president and Pastor Quiboloy not exactly are on the same page. Accusations go back and forth. I mean, this pastor has said time and time again, he is a threat to corrupt people. And I've seen him for years go after corruption in your country. If he believes you're corrupt and he can prove it, he goes after you. And of course, your former President Duterte was the same way. So now there's a problem between what I read, between your new president and Pastor Quiboloy. And then what happens? 2,000 SWAT team members, paramilitary people, federal, state, and local police go to grab him? Go to grab him? Your Senate there, one of the senators made sure that pastor was indicted for sex trafficking in the Philippines, a non-bondable offense. They got him in jail. They got him in a jail with guys, people in there that are charged with some very, very bad, vicious crimes. And he's sitting there with them. I mean, what they have done to weaponize your system of justice there to the people responsible is it's scary. And it scares people away. If you could do that to a pastor that has helped millions, 3 million people worldwide, he is dedicated, and I've seen the works he's done for children all over the world and poor people. If they could do that to him and get away with it, I got to tell you, it's a sad day for you folks. It's a sad day for our country here. And what this new president is going to do when Donald Trump is sworn in on Monday with the new attorney general, that stuff is going to stop. We're not putting up with it here, and our new president's not going to put up with it. Our attorney general's not going to put up with it. And the people that were doing it are not going to be in office. And if they can prove what they did violated the constitutional rights of the people they're doing it to, they better hire a lawyer themselves. But as I said, the weaponization of police, the police power in any city, any state, any country is such a chilling effect on what's happened. And I defer to Attorney Panelo because the years that he has practiced and represented people in his country, to me, certainly he's eloquent and can speak for himself. This has got to be heartbreaking, aside from the fact how outrageous it is for them to show worldwide this 2,000 militia people trying to find Pastor Quiboloy and take him in handcuffs. This is what's happening in the world today is a sad state of affairs. But my sense is, hopefully, we can change it. Hopefully, we can get the truth out. And the informants that have been used in the case against Pastor Quiboloy to get him, and I'll tell you, one of them was responsible for the whole thing. When that guy's lips move, he's lying. As long as his lips are moving, there's lies coming out of his mouth. And because of what he said to different agencies and different officers, I wind up with a pastor from this church that I've respected for years. And I've seen the works he's done all over the world. It's a sad day, and I'm terribly saddened by this, and I hope the lawyers in the Philippines can impress upon the judge there that he should be admitted to bail and will be able to defend himself properly.
Very green. The disgraceful act of the Department of Justice under the preceding administration to President Trump is not only exclusive to your country.
Absolutely not.
Because, as you said earlier, the Department of Justice in this country has been used as a weapon to harass, intimidate, threaten, file criminal charges against the political enemies of the present dispensation, as well as the allies of former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Case in point, of course, is the case of Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy. The charges against him were dismissed by the city prosecutor of Cebu. And the complainant appealed, and the DOJ slept on that. But 4 years later, it resurrected, and now Pastor Apollo Quiboloy is in jail for baseless charges of that.
You know, Sal, if you don't mind me calling you by your first name.
Yes, yes, sir.
I have great respect for you, as you well know. So one of the things I will tell you, I had heard of the reputation of former President Duterte. And I was very curious to meet him because I understand it when he ran to be mayor in Davao City. And then he went to Congress and came back and then became the president. I sat across from him at dinner twice. And he was clear about people. If you want to sell drugs, you want to have people die because of what you're peddling, you want to hurt your family, you know what? It could be a life sentence for you. It could be a death sentence. But he's very clear about it. Very, very clear about it. I really wanted to meet him. And then when I sat down across the table from him, and he told me why it happened, the reasons why he did it. I haven't met many people in my life that I had more respect for than your former president. And the reason I say that, the backstory, why I'm giving it to you now, I knew after I had dinner with him twice, and right across the table from me was Pastor Quiboloy. He sat at the former president's right hand. I sat at his left hand. There's not a person in this world that can ever convince me that your former president would sit down and have dinner with a man he thought was guilty of sexually assaulting women or girls. Sex trafficking never, ever happened with this man's former president's morals, how he feels about crime, and the people who commit crime. Not a chance in the world do I believe it would be part and parcel of his friendship with Pastor Quiboloy.
I agree with you because the former president is so hateful of oppression as well as this kind of baseless filing of criminal charges against innocent people. He will never tolerate them during his administration.
Well, as I said, I hope you folks are able to be able to make sure that justice is served there. But you know, the things that make headlines are usually the worst things. People accused without having a chance to defend themselves. Putting this pastor in a jail cell that's oftentimes reserved for drug dealers, murderers, rapists, to put him in there and not let him get hospital care and treatment in a different place, to me, is just part of weaponization of the Justice Department in the Philippines. So you know what? One thing they'll never do, they'll never break this man's spirit, this pastor's spirit, ever, ever, ever. But if they keep him there another couple of months, everybody in that jail is going to wind up going to his church when they get out. He'll convert every one of them.
By the way, Attorney Green, whatever happened to the case of Pastor Quiboloy in the U.S.? It has been dragging for so many years.
So you know, you'll appreciate this. It's very difficult because in order to defend him, it's still going on. But in order to defend him, we can't get witnesses to California. They won't give them visas. So we're going to have to get permission from the court to take depositions in the Philippines, or else it's just a one-sided trial. And I don't like going into a gunfight without any bullets. So we'll have to go there. All the other people that were indicted with him for lesser charges that had to do with witness marriage fraud and visa fraud, it's all been dismissed. They pled to one count. There's no jail time. And let me just mention one other thing. The case does go on, and we're not going to win an issue of dismissing because we can't try the case without the witnesses. But one of the other things I just want to mention about weaponization. It's one thing to get a group of people with shotguns, machine guns, going in at night and terrifying hundreds and hundreds of people in the compound. The next thing they did, this church has been there for almost 40 years. 40 years, giving people an education and feeding them. Come to me and I will care for you. They froze all the assets of the church. They froze everything without a hearing on it because mainly of one informant who reached out. The guy I told you about, when his lips move, he's lying.
But I understand that the U.S. government, the prosecution side, has been postponing the trial of the case of Pastor Apollo Quiboloy.
Well, you know what? I know what you're going to say, Sal. You know, why don't I file a motion to dismiss? Of course, he's got very, very good lawyers there. But, you know, it's right now, all they have are the words of this informant and the people he got to help him testify against the informant. I mean, against the alleged victims of sex trafficking. But in order for us to at least put someone else before a jury and try the case, we've got to be able to get some witnesses of our own. We've gotten rid of all of the other defendants in the case. There are two left, Pastor Quiboloy and one of my former clients here, Felina Salinas. There's only two left. And the government doesn't want to give up that case. Unfortunately, the judge is 91 years old. And there's been no extradition attempted for the pastor. And of course, under our extradition treaty with the Philippines, if there's a case pending in the Philippines, that particular person cannot be extradited. So you know, we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to sit there along with his attorney and have to defend not me, but his lawyer defending him without any witnesses other than the people that have been lying to the FBI for years. So it's not a question of why don't we get the case dismissed when they drag it on. He's never been in front of the court. He's an indicted person, but he's never appeared before the court. They've never attempted to extradite him back to the United States. And now they made sure they locked him up in the Philippines for that case that was already dismissed once.
But is it not that dragging the case for so many years is so unfair for Pastor Apollo Quiboloy?
Well, you know, when you wind up, if you lose witnesses, people die or things like that. But as I said, you know, we want to make sure, and I know his lawyer does, to make sure that, you know, justice is equal as best we can. And if he goes back, if he appears, in other words, they say, you want to go to trial? Voluntarily submit yourself to the jurisdiction. And they're going to lock him up right away as a danger to the community or a flight risk. I don't want him sitting in a jail there. I certainly don't want him sitting in a jail where you are. They made sure once the government our government did not try to indict him, they got him indicted in the Philippines for sex trafficking. After years, that was never one of the charges. But this is a non-bailable charge, and that's why. So we're kind of juggling with whether I should move to dismiss, because all the government's going to say is, have him waive extradition. You had 3 years to bring him back here, even though they never attempted to extradite him. You know, one of the things that happened a few years ago, Sal, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Pastor was about to leave the Philippines. He was flying to another country. And he got a phone call on a cell phone. Don't get on the plane. It turned out the government got to the pilots. He thought he was going to one country. He was going to wind up in Los Angeles. So we were concerned that they were just going to kidnap him. Our government's done that before in another case in particular. So, you know, it's kind of tough because They never tried to extradite him. And then they nailed him that's the weaponization in the Philippines. To charge him with an offense that's not bondable and freeze and seize all the assets. They have prevented Pastor's lawyer from receiving $1 in fees in the last 2.5 years. $1, he cannot be paid a single dollar. So, I mean, and he's still on the case. He's a great guy. He's a great lawyer. But like I said, it's, there's 50% of one, 50% of another side in defending someone. But he's got to have somebody that could say this whole thing is a lie. I was there. I know what happened in the kingdom. I know what happened in California. Never happened that he would ever do this or ever thought of doing that. But the weaponization of government that we have seen, that we've talked about with Senator Hawley, and what we've seen happening to the church and your government, it's a sad day for maybe lawyers like you and I that have been around for a long time, and we're seeing this thing turn around where it's really tough to fight the money they have and the power that they have. But you know what? Former President Duterte and Pastor Quiboloy, they don't bat an eye, and they'll fight him. And right now, he's sitting in jail.
Attorney Sal, you're on mute, sir. Kindly unmute.
Go ahead.
To fast track the case of Pastor Apollo?
Well, I mean, they have to bring in a trial, speedy trial, but if you waive your rights to speedy trial because you want to, in fact, have time to prepare and get your witnesses. So in actuality, by delaying it this long, the government has conceded that the co-defendants, some of the citizens of the Philippines that they originally arrested in California and put them in jail, they've dismissed all the charges except one, and our sense is none of them will probably go to jail. And some want to come back home to the Philippines, another wants to stay in California, but it's all done now except for two, Pastor Quiboloy and Felina Salinas.
Sir, we still have a few more questions on the line. Attorney Sal, if may I. During the confirmation hearing of former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, she said, Attorney Green,
something is wrong.
That if confirmed as USAG, she would work with Congress to investigate or to probe the weaponization of the Department of Justice against the people of faith. What will this do to the cases? Trump charges against the kingdom and the U.S., Attorney Green.
I want to make sure that Attorney Panelo hears the question, Michael. He's saying that he can't hear the question.
Yes, sir. We'll get back to Attorney Panelo as our technical people will be fixing his line. But, sir, going back to the question, what with the present situation under the Trump administration, with the confirmation hearing and the conversation of Attorney Bondi and Attorney Hawley, what would this do? What will be the effect of these conversation to our cases, the Trump charges filed against the KOJC there in the U.S.?
Well, look, one of the things that came up in those hearings is, and one of the senators brought it up, if you have an individual, a person that you want to get, and then you get that person and you make sure you go wherever you have to get people to give evidence against that person, that's part of the weaponization. They did that with Donald Trump. They picked him out because they were terrified that he would win. Two of our states, they for a while they ruled he couldn't even be on the ballot. So once they had Trump, they indicted him in 4 different places. They made up stuff. I mean, how can you go to trial where he went to trial in New York? 32 counts, he gets found guilty on trumped-up charges, and the judge says, Godspeed, good luck as the new president. Never got a single day in jail, never got a single fine, no probation. They made it up. That's where you pick out an individual, and then you go to get him. Do I think that happened in the Philippines? Without question. The person they wanted was Pastor Quiboloy. Now, do what you got to do to get enough people surrounding that case to get him locked up without bail. And as Sal mentioned, that case was thrown out before. They just resurrected it and brought it back and added some new stuff to make sure he couldn't get out of jail. What happened in our country with Donald Trump is happening in your country with Pastor Quiboloy. And that's what's happening. And look, I've read the articles between Pastor and former President Duterte and Marcos. I've read it all. Well, maybe not all. There's probably some stuff I didn't see. But what I read between the three of them was not very complimentary about President Marcos. So, but it's what happened in our country with Donald Trump is very, very similar to what they're doing to Pastor in the Philippines. The weaponization is clear.
Yes, sir. Can we say that the KOJC, as a Philippine-based organization, was not spared from the attacks? In your country, there in the U.S., did they see KOJC as a threat or as a competition against the mega churches there in the U.S.? With how they treat the good pastor and the KOJC there?
I'm not so sure they think of KOJC as a threat. I can tell you that they've gone all over the country building libraries, homes, educating people all over the country. I haven't seen that. I mean, we have churches in the United States that are bigger and wealthier and have people working for them, forcing them to tithe. I don't see that they thought the kingdom of Jesus Christ was a threat to other churches. But I can tell you that depending on what your religious belief is, in this case, Catholicism, they clearly, there's a special place in their hearts to get you. I believe that.
Yes, sir. And would it be safe to say that the kingdom of Jesus Christ there in the U.S. is part of a collateral damage from these attacks on what they call as people of faith there, which had been legitimized under the Biden administration?
Certainly, but certainly they're certainly anti-abortion. I will tell you that. And they've tried to stop them in every state where they're trying to raise funds for children and for the kingdom and things like that. But anything that looks like it's anti-abortion, pro-life was in a really bad place with Biden. I mean, we have a federal laws where you can't go after justices of our Supreme Court. You can't try to intimidate them. When our Supreme Court ruled on Roe versus Wade, they had people marching in front of the justices' homes with signs. Their lives, at least one of their lives, was threatened. No one did anything. I mean, Garland, the Attorney General, could care less because it helped Biden get votes. He could care less. To threaten a justice of our Supreme Court? The guy's a travesty. But now, it's coming out. The people in this country saw through these guys, and unfortunately, our former president, who's going to be former on Monday, he probably can't spell his name at this point in his life.
Sir, there's a phone-in question by one of our viewers who's viewing now live. In his second term, the incoming president, Trump, faced numerous civil and criminal cases. There appears to be a strong similarity in the pattern of persecution against Trump and our beloved pastor. Would you see it that way, sir?
Well, the similarity is they brought the weight of the government against both of them. In our country, if you want to prosecute someone and get him charged, the prosecutor has the power to bring his own witnesses or her own witnesses in front of a grand jury, a federal or state grand jury. They ask the questions. The witness is prepared to answer them. The accused is never allowed to be present. The accused lawyer is not allowed to be present, and they get charged criminally. Then they go out and they get them and they pick them up. And what happened in the Philippines when the case was originally dismissed, the same case. Now they went after him, and I apologize to the citizens of the Philippines for the opinion I have that your president, Marcos, is responsible. His footprint is all over this, in my belief, to send those military people out to the compound, put him in jail, and make sure he stayed in the jail where he is right now. I have not the slightest doubt he weaponized the military and people there to do this against Pastor. So, 40 years he's been saving lives, and this president does what he did. I have good faith and belief that the people that represent the pastor now there and hopefully here in California will make sure justice is done. It's a tragedy to see him locked up.
Sir, in his conversation, Senator Hawley, in his conversation with the incoming Attorney General, he said, and I quote, that they have legitimized the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans. But at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FACE Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Hook of Pennsylvania. To him, this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, even 7 children in the early morning hours. An FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. End of quote. What are your thoughts about this, sir, and the significance of this statement by Senator Hawley in the cases, Trump charges against a good pastor?
But let's, first of all, with that case that was in Philadelphia, he's got 7 kids. He was charged with trying to persuade a woman from not entering an abortion clinic. And supposedly he shoved a Planned Parenthood clinic escort to the ground. So the federal government says, I'm not going to charge him with that. The state says, I'm not charging him. Well, you know what? Our president and the attorney general sent out the SWAT team, 20 people with guns, and pointed them at his little kids. Handcuffed him and took him in. What country are we living in where that can happen? And that was under the Biden regime, and this guy that was the attorney general, guy's a phony. And you know what? I'd like to be able to go to Washington, help him pack and get the hell out of there. But that's what they do. When would you believe in a million years you would see what happened at the compound in Davao City? I mean, you couldn't even, there were 2,000 military people there and police, state and federal, looking for Pastor Quiboloy. For 3 years, he's doing sermons for 5 hours in his church. Where the hell were they? There's a warrant out of California. Where were they? He's right here. You want him? Come get him. Nothing. Nothing. And then you have Marcos as president, and all hell broke loose.
Sir, we have 2 more questions left on the line. Is it concerning that the Biden FBI and the DOJ have recruited informants and spies into Christian churches based on nothing more than faith? This was evident in the case of the KOJC. Will this pattern fully display on the case that you're handling there in the U.S.?
Well, you know what? I have absolute proof. The case I did in Hawaii, for someone that was charged, she and the pastor were on one of the planes together. The case I did here, they had a main informant. It's the same guy I told you about his lips moving and lying. I have his initial report about what happened. And then when the church, the kingdom, decided to do an audit of Apollo Air, which he was running, do an audit of the college, which his wife was running, they ran like thieves in the night. And then a year later, he submits another report about the same incident and lied and lied and lied. And the FBI knew he was lying. Our prosecutors in Hawaii knew he was lying, and they got rid of the guy. And the bad charges went away. He's the same informant that led to this case in California. The same guy. And everybody knows who he is. So you know what? His day will come. For now, I just want this. I want the kingdom to be able to keep saving lives, helping children all over the world. God forbid our pastor gets sick. I know he's had some heart problems. He's had some surgery. The one thing they will never do is break his spirit. They'll never stop him from going forward to save people. And I'm hoping people like Sal's been doing it for 100 years. And some of the other people around him. He's got good lawyers in the Philippines. And, and I'll do everything I can for the kingdom worldwide. But I did a case in some countries where the same informant was reaching out to some people to testify against pastor in the Philippines. Ukraine. I was involved in a case in Ukraine because the same informant. I should let you know what his name is because you don't want to walk next to him when there's a lightning storm.
Sir,
We're all going to get hit.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. Down to our last question. Do we see the light at the end of the tunnel during these in the upcoming Trump administration that the name and reputation of our beloved pastor in the U.S. will be cleared?
Well, it's a whole different type of a case. My understanding is that SM&I has been invited to the inauguration on Monday, a representative from the station. But you know what? It's my sense is, and I'm aware of the fact that you don't have jury trials in the Philippines. And I don't know, I'm sure whatever judge passes in front of will be very bright and will be able to follow what the law is and what the evidence is. So I can tell you that, unscrambling the egg here, now that we have a new president, is going to actually wind up with the same result in the Philippines. I certainly hope it does. But I can tell you what, the people we have with this church, this kingdom, we're never going to stop working to get them home and make sure that lives continue to be saved by the kingdom.
People online are asking our global audience if our legal team there in the U.S. will seek help to the president himself, President Trump, on the cases filed against our beloved pastor.
All right, so let's try to give them an answer to a question, because I know how they feel. President Trump can pardon him on Tuesday, and he's home free. But before anybody gets pardoned, whoever speaks to the president about pardoning people, they have to have enough information about facts and circumstances that gave rise to the charges. So you can't just say, you know what, I'm the new president, I'm going to pardon the pastor that was wrongfully charged. It's a long time to learn the facts of the case. I mean, who would have believed in a million years that we would have a president of the United States that just pardoned people on death row, one, for raping a parent in front of her children and then cutting the kid's throat, raping a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and then cutting their throats, and he lets them off death row. He commuted everybody on death row. That a jury convicted of murder and death penalties, and he let them all go. So now they spend their lives in prison at the expense of $55,000 a year to taxpayers. But at any rate, it's a long road to pardon, and whatever staff there is will take a long time to figure out what happened to Pastor here in the United States and what happened there. But listen, there's no stone we're going to leave unturned. This is a man a pastor of great integrity and commitment, and I've seen it for the last 4 years plus. I visited with him a number of times, and I'm proud and honored to call him a pastor and be involved, be around him.
Sir, there have been plenty of questions are coming in from our global audience, and the certain Southern Poverty Law Center was mentioned in the questioning of Senator Hawley to the incoming AG. Do you think that this group, the Southern Poverty Law Center, tagged KOJC as a terrorist organization, thus causing OFAC sanctions against the kingdom there in the U.S. and in the Philippines?
Well, I'm being told by my office manager that organization is an anti-church organization. But, there are so many. There's people are for things, they're against things. It's just hard to believe. I mean, there are so many pieces to the puzzle. Where you have to look, what you have to turn over, what reports you have to have, people that have to be questioned. Listen, if we have our way the past in the next few months, I want him, if I can, he has the best lawyers in the Philippines, to get this trial over as soon as possible, as opposed to having him staying there for a year or two waiting to go to trial. So this is not a case where there's going to be a release of someone automatically because what they've done to Pastor, they did to Trump. It's going to take a lot of investigating to do that, and there's a lot to do right now as Trump comes into office. But he knows what weaponization is. His new Attorney General knows what it is, and it's so obvious what Marcos did in the Philippines.
Sir, what is our comment in the upcoming partnership of the incoming AG and Senator Hawley in creating or in chairing a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee, where they will be doing their own investigation as to what happened at the FBI and the DOJ during the Biden administration?
What's the question?
What's your reaction to that, sir? That the incoming AG and Senator Hawley will be partnering or tandeming in this cause?
So what happens in those circumstances is they come in and they start looking under rocks interviewing people. I can tell you now that these people, we have a new president, we have a new attorney general they know is honest. You're going to find people in the FBI that have come forward and they're going to sit down and tell them what they saw happen to a bureau, an FBI bureau that had high integrity, was respected worldwide, and this is what happened to it in the last 4 years. It's unspeakable what's happened there and what they've turned their backs on. So, you know, listen, they got to start somewhere, but I think by the end of 4 years, I think there may be some FBI agents and other people in positions like that, government positions of law enforcement, that are going to be in serious trouble.
Thank you, Attorney. And what will be your message to the followers and supporters of our beloved pastor who's watching this interview worldwide?
Let me say this, and I don't say it because I represent the kingdom worldwide. I know this pastor. I've been around him for years. I've been around the kingdom and the board of directors. I've seen the works he's done. There's a 24-minute video where we have people speaking around the world in tears thanking him for clothing them, for feeding them, to getting them off the street, housing them. This is a man that 40-some years ago, or just about 40 years, in a little church in a pew eating bananas, that have turned this kingdom into a place where they've educated people that never could get an education. They fed them, they've housed them. When I say I'm honored to have met him and be with him and speak with him and watch his good works, they should never, ever in your country lose faith in the integrity of this pastor and the kingdom of Jesus Christ, ever.
Thank you so much, Attorney Green, and for your support for our beloved pastor, Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy, and his legal team, who's been very supportive in our cause here in the Philippines, sir.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, sir.
You know, I will tell you one final thing, Michael. I remember driving around in Manila and listening. My driver had his radio on, and what I heard was Pastor on SMNI. It was wonderful. And the next time I'm there, there's silence, and it's really a shame.
Sir, there have been a few questions left in our line. These are questions from our global viewers. I would just like to ask you about a comment on the statement of Senator Hawley, and I quote, that he's glad to hear the reforms that the incoming AG will going to put in the Department of Justice. And he said that they need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and they need it quickly. And he's glad that the incoming AG is committed to it. And Senator Hawley said, and I quote, he also heard that he'd been asked about the comment that in cases that we need investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, I think it'll happen. You've heard the expression, rats running off a sinking ship. The ship will start to sink as of Monday. And the bad guys there's going to be people telling on them, people with integrity. The rats are going to be found out. It may not happen in the first day, the first month, or the first year, but it's coming. And I think agents are worried that they just followed what they were told to do, even if they did corrupt acts. But, you know, like I said, there were lawyers who represent Pastor there and here, and I just was shocked when I saw what happened with to Pastor and the kingdom when they all went on into the commune, and I know what happened here, and it's very, very troubling.
And also this last point that Senator Josh Hawley pointed, and I quote, that there has been a memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, and he said this memo that was developed by the FBI on January 23, 2023, targeted Catholic parishes for spying and for recruitment of infiltrators. The memo goes on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes and choirs. This is an unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights. Your thoughts on this, sir?
You know what? So we're supposed to be, you know, the American flag, the home of freedom and of the brave. The memo that you're talking about, it says at the top in bold letters, unclassified, for official use only, FBI internal use only, do not disseminate externally. They didn't want the people to find out about this. This is disgraceful. But an informant turned it over. And Senator Hawley has got it. And the president's going to see this. Shame on them. Let's just hope they don't break down my door tonight.
Thank you, sir. And on the final point, Senator Hawley also said that we only knew it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. He said, I will tell you, he's never have been misled and lied by the current Attorney General, who is now former FBI Director. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, I can't necessarily get into Hawley's head, but the person that turned this over is a really brave, honest person. And, the words speak for themselves. It says what it says. Who would ever dream that the Bureau would be involved in this? Because there's some great FBI agents. There are guys who have devoted their lives, men and women, to making sure justice has been done and respect our country, our flag, and its citizens. And then there's a few others that maybe made a left-hand turn when they shouldn't have. And they're going to find out.
Yes, sir. And Senator Hawley said that when they sat right where you're sitting now, told this committee, he said that only one field office was involved in those operations, and it was a single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. But it turns out that's not true. Multiple field offices and individuals were involved. Multiple individuals were involved in those operations, sir. Your thoughts on that?
I absolutely believe that's true. I would have liked to have been there in the Philippines when Marcos and his generals were gathering all their troops together and coordinating a raid on Davao City in the compound. Unbelievable how they were getting ready to disgrace the kingdom and to arrest its pastor. And as I said, they had 3.5 years. They knew where he was every Sunday. So I believe it happened all over. Absolutely believe it.
Thank you so much, Attorney Green, for your time, and God bless, sir. And before we go, we'll get you a happy birthday, because we know that it's your birthday today, sir. Happy natal day, sir.
30 years old, but look how bad I look.
Happy birthday, sir.
Got a great picture.
Greetings from the Philippines.
Mahalo. Oh, there's a great picture.
Thank you, sir. Yan po mga kababayan, ang General Counsel ng Kingdom of Jesus Christ, na si Attorney Michael Green, kaugnay po sa update sa ating po mga depensa dyan sa US at yung komento ng legal team sa naging pagtatanong ng isang senador sa incoming Attorney General ng Trump administration. Para po sa mga hindi nakapanood, panoorin po natin ang bahagi ng mga pagtalakay at yung pagtatanong ni Senator Josh Hawley sa incoming Attorney General po ng Trump administration na si Attorney Pam Bondi.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm so glad that you've been nominated, as we discussed when we had the chance to meet.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to work with you as the State Attorney General for a number of years, and I'm delighted to see you here today before the committee. I look forward to your confirmation. You will be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. One of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to get even more specific. In the last 4 years, this administration has carried out an unprecedented attack and campaign against people of faith. If you look at the numbers, we've never seen anything like it before in American history. It has been one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the Justice Department and in the history of the FBI. And I hope that you will reverse this and do right by every American citizen, including especially people of faith. Let me give you some specifics. After the Dobbs case was decided by the Supreme Court, over 100 pregnancy care centers and over 300 churches in this country were attacked, vandalized, firebombed. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's Justice Department brought in those cases?
I do not, Senator.
It's a stunning number. It's 2. Hundreds of churches, hundreds of pregnancy care centers. And I might just add, these pregnancy care centers, the attacks on them, which were violent, which were gruesome, were egged on and encouraged by rhetoric from members of Congress, including members of this body, who have said that pregnancy care centers aren't real medicine, that they're not real doctors. They have legitimized these attacks. And the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans. But at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FACE Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Houck from Pennsylvania, to whom this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, 7 children. In the early morning hours, an FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. This kind of outrageous, disparate treatment has to end. So here's my question to you. Will you protect churches and pregnancy care centers when they are targeted for violence, when they are targeted for intimidation, when their members or parishioners are threatened with violence or other acts of illegal behavior?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the disparate treatment of Americans on the basis of religious faith?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans for nothing more than their pro-life beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
Will you ensure that nothing like the Mark Houck case happens again, that Americans do not have SWAT teams arriving on their front doors with armed weapons to terrorize their children and their spouses, only in the end, of course, to have the case lost because there was nothing to it? Will you put an end to that kind of deliberate intimidation of the good American citizens on the basis of their religious beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
I'm glad to hear you say that because we need it. We need it. Ms. Bondi, we need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that. You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable, unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights, and we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI Director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I am confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides. That this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here in my just few seconds that are remaining. This memo targeting Catholic parishes repeatedly refers to as an expert source a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long history as an anti-religious group that has repeatedly gone after conservative and religious organizations, called them hate groups, called them sometimes terrorist groups. They're cited in this memo. They once infamously, the SPLC called the Family Research Council a terrorist hate group, and an armed gunman came into their lobby and opened fire. Will you put a stop to the use of the SPLC as an official source for any Department of Justice memorandum or finding?
That will be one of the first things we will look at as well, Senator, and report back to you and the committee.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At yan po ang naging talakayan, mga kababayan, sa confirmation hearing ng incoming Attorney General ng Trump administration, si Attorney Pam Bondi, at ang pagtatanong po ni Senator Josh Hawley, isa rin pong abogado, at napag-usapan po nila yung weaponization ng DOJ at ng FBI sa ilalim po ng Biden administration at ang kinalaman ng mga kanilang pinag-usapan sa kinahaharap ng mga gawa-gawang kaso laban sa KOJC at kay Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy dito naman din sa Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po sa ating mga kababayan na patuloy pong sumusubaybay sa ating palatuntunan at sa lahat po ng mga kababayan natin na nakasubaybay sa lahat po ng kanilang mga telebisyon at patuloy pong nakatutok sa lahat po ng ating public service program. Sa ngalan po ni Partner Hannah Jane Sancho, sa muli ako po si MJ Mondear, sa ngalan din po ni Attorney Sal Panelo. Kita-kita po muli tayo sa Lunes, alas 9:30 hanggang alas 10:30 ng umaga, dito lamang sa programang Problema Nyo, Itawag kay Panelo.
Problema Nyo, Itawag kay Panelo.
Dami